Three-point shooting is a big part of the offense in the NBA today, so players who can make shots from far away are in high demand by teams that want to win. But some good scorers or offensive players in the NBA don't depend on their shooting to help their team score. And in this video, we'll talk about players who aren't known for being good shooters but are still considered pretty solid offensives. First off, we've got Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis is the current NBA MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, and he's won these awards twice. Even though he's done great over the last few seasons and has improved a lot, these are still questions about how well he can shoot the ball. The 6'11 forward may not even need a three-point shot because his playmaking ability is something he needs to fix in the NBA playoffs, but it helps to have a good outside shot, and he's only made 30% of his three-pointers this year, which is the fourth worst in the 2020 and 2021 NBA season. The two-time MVP's ability to make free throws could be important for the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs, though. This year, he's made 68% of his free throws, and over the last couple of months, he's gotten a lot better. Antetokounmpo doesn't have the best outside shooting, but he can be very effective from mid-range and is a strong candidate to win MVP for the third year in a row. Up next, Jimmy Butler. The Miami Heat's offense is much better with Jimmy Butler on the team. He showed he was an elite scorer and passer in the 2020 NBA playoffs when he led the Heat to the NBA Finals and had some amazing games in the deciding series. In the 2020-2021 NBA season, Butler is averaging 21.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 7.3 assists. For his career, he's averaging a solid 17.54. However, Butler, who used to be an inconsistent but acceptable shooter, hasn't been as good as that part of his game in the last few years. Even though he scored 19.9 points per game and made 48% of his field goals last season, he's only made 23% of his three-point shots in the last few years. His three-point shooting's still among the best in the NBA, though, and he's made 84% of his free throws over the course of his NBA career and 85% this season. Followed by Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, a former MVP, has had a hard time making shots in the last few years. The point guard for the Washington Wizards is still a strong and intense player for his team, but his game's gotten worse in some ways, especially his shooting. His ability to shoot three-pointers has never been his best offensive skill, but after making 34% of his three-pointers in the 2016-17 NBA season, he's only made 28% of his triples in the last 4 regular seasons. And if that wasn't bad enough already, his free throw shooting dipped dramatically as well. In his first 9 years in the NBA, Westbrook made 82% of his free throws. He even had a great year where he made 85% of his free throws. He's made 62% of his free throws in this season, though. That's the lowest percentage of his career. Moving on to Ben Simmons. Simmons is a talented point guard, and his 6'10" height makes him a pretty strong presence in the backcourt for the Philadelphia 76ers. He helps his team make plays on offense and is a good facilitator. Also, he's been in the NBA for 4 years and has averaged 16.3 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 7.9 assists per game. He's been consistent in that too, as his numbers in the 2020 and 21 season have stayed about the same. He's a good scorer with a career shooting percentage of 56%, but he's not a great shooter. Actually, he doesn't like to shoot and usually doesn't try from mid-range or long range. He's only taken 33 three-pointers in his 255 regular season games, and 10 of them have been bad shots. If the Sixers want to fix Ben Simmons, the first thing that stands out is that he can't shoot. He's never been able to shoot in the NBA. He just doesn't want to shoot, which makes the Sixers' offense more predictable and makes it easier for the team's defenses to handle. In 2021, we saw defenders just stand off Simmons at the three-point line because they knew he wasn't going to shoot. And even if he did, they knew he probably wouldn't hit the target. Next, Pascal Siakam. Siakam came into the league as a pretty well-rounded defensive player with raw offensive talent. He could stop point guards and centers alike. But since he wasn't good at making shots, he knew if he wanted to start, he'd have to hit enough three-pointers to make teams pay for leaving him open. So yes, that's what he did. He's a good offensive player who's supposed to be the next big thing for the Toronto Raptors after he helped them win the NBA championship in the 2018-19 season. But he's gone backwards in the 2020-21 season and has had trouble shooting from far away. In the 18-19 and 19-20 NBA seasons, he averaged 19.5 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 3.3 assists per game and shot 50, 36, 79% of the time. Last year, though, he had trouble with the shooting part of his game. Siakam's still a good scorer as he averages 20.3 points per game, but so far in the 2020-21 season, he shot 45, 29, and 82. His three-point percentage was the third worst among all specialist shooters in the 2020-21 NBA season. Let's learn more about Jamal Crawford. If the DH can't hit, it's the same as if the shooting guard couldn't shoot, and Jamal Crawford's the perfect person to fill this role. In his last season with the Bulls, he averaged 17.3 points per game and shot a terrible .386. Even though Isaiah Thomas didn't seem to notice, he didn't do much better with the Knicks, who got rid of him as soon as the new team took over. He's been a .403 clunker his whole life, and his shots are worse than bricks. They're more like the kind made from cinder blocks. Coming up, Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd might be the only one on this list who could get away with bad shooting. Kidd's biggest problem always seemed to be his lackluster shot making, with a career percentage of .402. In 6 of his 14 seasons, he shot below .400. Luckily though, he only took 12.6 shots per game on average. Kidd was a solid player though, so it's hard to criticize him, but he could have tallied even more assists if he'd passed more than bricking open jump shots. Next, Baron Davis. Another point guard who should get some slack because he can pass the ball. He averages 7.3 assists over his career, while Kidd averaged 9.2. He also shot 15 times per game, which is more than Kidd. And he's not nearly as good as getting the ball back as Jason was, so his .413 field goal percentage over the course of his career is not as good. Even though his salary is about half of Kidd's, he needs to realize that if the rim makes fun of him, he doesn't have to get back at it by shooting random shots at it. Followed by Allen Iverson. Baseball players have hit with a higher average than me, myself, and Iverson have shot in an entire season. His lowest batting averages have been .387 and .398. He averages 27.4 points and has a career shooting percentage of .425. Averaging 31 points per game over the course of a season is impressive, but it's not as impressive when you have to take almost 28 shots per game to do it. Last but not least, some honorable mentions. Derek Fisher is strange because he's a point guard, but he can't shoot or pass the ball. His average of only 3.2 assists per game over his whole career is hidden only by the fact that he can't shoot. He's got a career batting average of .401. At least he moves slowly. The last time anyone saw Antoine Walker, it was somewhere in Memphis. Even though he can get the ball back, his career shooting percentage of .414 and average of 16.5 shots per game don't quite make up for it. Steven Jackson loves to shoot three-pointers, which has hurt his field goal percentage, which is now .418. Finally, Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady's never had a season in which he hit better than .457. His career field goal percentage is .437, and in his worst years, he shot .417, .406, and .419, which is sad. T-Mac's game wasn't about the shooting, that's true. He averaged 16.1 rebounds over his career and between 5 and 6 assists per game on average. But for $20 million a year, would it have killed him to pick his shots a little more carefully? And on that note, we'll wrap up this video. How important do you think it is for a player to be able to shoot? Does a good offense make up for a bad shooting game? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.